My apologies for not being able to speak to you in French. But thank you for inviting me to come and to speak with you today. I am honored to be here and to hopefully forge ahead working with the good people in France on an international movement to ban all forms of surrogacy, to protect women, to protect children, and society at large. The debate over surrogacy in the United States has reached a tipping point. Celebrities and everyday people are increasingly using women as surrogates, gestational carriers, breeders, to build their families. Added to this debate is the growing acceptance of same-sex marriage, or as supporters would like to call it, marriage equality, which has fueled the efforts of those eager to conceive children via surrogacy. Policymakers and the public at large are debating whether surrogacy can be made better, limiting the harms and the risk of exploitation simply by regulating it, or should it be entirely banned, prohibited, with contracts void and unenforceable. With a growing sense of urgency, I believe we have a limited window of time to educate the public and our lawmakers. Of course, the public and our policymakers are woefully uninformed on the complexities of surrogacy and the medical and psychological risks to women and to children, which is why this conference is so timely and so very important. And that is also why we made this film, to tell the stories of women and children who have been harmed by surrogacy. Whether I am showing our film Eggsploitation, which highlights the harms to women who choose to sell their eggs, or Breeders, a subclass of women, our data bears out that audiences prior to watching these films tend to know little or nothing about the subject matter. For example, our surveys conducted on audiences before watching our film Eggsploitation show that people are generally favorable to egg donation. But they actually state now after watching the film that they are against the practice. They overwhelmingly change their minds against egg donation. The same is true of audience response to watching Breeders. They at first think, what could go wrong? This is a wonderful way to help another have a baby. But after watching Breeders, they oppose surrogacy because of risks to maternal-child health, the breaking of the important and good maternal-child bonds, and the treatment of women as a breeding class. In Breeders, a subclass of women, we intentionally interviewed women who entered into all of the various forms of surrogacy arrangements, showing that no matter how surrogacy is done, it can lead to problems. We interviewed traditional surrogates, women giving away or selling their biological children. We interviewed altruistic surrogates, helping another but seeking no financial compensation or gain. We interviewed gestational surrogates who were compensated financially for renting out their womb. Women who were altruistic surrogates for family members, helping a family member have a child. And women who were surrogates for gay couples or heterosexual couples. In Breeders, you will hear from Gail and Cindy and Heather and Tanya, all surrogates involved in these various combinations of surrogacy arrangements, and all ended up with terrible complications and outcomes. Some had serious pregnancy complications. Gail and Cindy, who were both pregnant with donor eggs and both carrying twins, developed preeclampsia and maternal hypertension. And due to their maternal age and the fact that they were carrying twins, this also made them high-risk pregnancies. Both women delivered prematurely, had to have cesarean section deliveries, and lengthy hospital stays for them and the children. As one fertility expert in Breeders states, these are expensive technologies, and everyone likes a sale. You get 2 babies for the price of 1. An important study from Loma Linda University Children's Hospital in California, where I am from, entitled Impact of Assisted Reproductive Technologies on Pregnancies in California, showed that with assisted reproductive technology pregnancies, there was a 4- to 5-fold increase in stillbirths, compared with a 2- to 3-fold increase among women with infertility and those naturally conceiving women. Assisted reproductive technology pregnancies underwent more cesarean sections, a 4-fold increase, and a near 4-fold increase in the rate of preterm premature deliveries. Multiple gestations were increased 24 to 27-fold compared with naturally conceived pregnancies. Maternal hospital stays and hospital charges were increased among these pregnancies. Infant charges were increased multi-fold for singleton twins and multiple triplets delivered with assisted reproductive technology, compared again with naturally conceived babies. Dr. Alan Merritt, who conducted this study, told me the cesarean section rate for surrogates was 52%, while the cesarean section rate for all other gestations were only 33%, still a number way too high. Also, our multiple rate for surrogate pregnancies in his hospital was 52%. In 2012 to 2013, his hospital had 69 infants born via surrogacy. 4 had early deaths from extreme prematurity, and the remainder of the 65 infants averaged an average hospital stay of 15.1 days, which cost the state of California almost $200,000 US per pregnancy. In Heather, again featured in Breeders, she was asked to abort the child that she was carrying when the baby was diagnosed with a genetic defect. Heather faced a terrible decision and refused to have the abortion, even as the intended parents demanded her to. The intended father told Heather that she would suffer spiritual consequences for not obeying them. Tanya and Heather in the film both had difficulty separating from the children that they gave birth to. They bonded with these babies. Tanya was a traditional surrogate, and Heather was a gestational mother. So no matter which way these babies were conceived, mothers should and do attach to the babies they are carrying. Surrogacy intentionally severs important maternal-child bonding and falsely claims it doesn't matter to the mother or to the child. The most important voice of all in this debate, of course, is that of the child or the children created by these third-party contracts. Jessica in the film is just one brave woman who is speaking out against the literal buying and selling of children and how that makes a human being feel. As she says in the film, at the end of the day, you feel like a product that someone sold and someone bought. Our problem in the United States is unfortunate because we have no national policy prohibiting surrogacy, and each state can have its own law. Our strategy in the United States is to continue to push back on the health risks of egg donation. There is a growing trend in surrogacy to use donor eggs, especially in the case of a gay couple. And as the movement has shifted from traditional surrogacy to gestational surrogacy, surrogates are asked to become pregnant with donor eggs. And the medical literature bears out these significant health risks to the women pregnant using donor eggs. Secondly, we continue to highlight the harms of intentionally separating the mother and child immediately at birth. As a pediatric nurse, I remind audiences all the time, there is one thing and only one thing a baby knows at birth. They know their mother. Third, we are pushing back on the rhetoric of a right to a child. No one, gay or straight, has a right to a child by surrogacy or in vitro fertilization. And finally, as always, we focus on the best interest of the child, and the best interest is to be raised at all times possible within the context of their genetic mother and their genetic father. No one has a right to a child. Commercial surrogacy is indistinguishable from the buying and selling of children. Even altruistic surrogacy exposes women and children to risks and harms and must be banned. There is no regulation that will make surrogacy ethical, responsible, or permissible. As feminist author, journalist Katja Ekman in Sweden states, surrogacy is prostitution's little sister. And if we don't stop all forms of surrogacy now, it will become an industry as big as the prostitution industry. It's time for us to join together and to stop surrogacy now. I encourage you to buy a copy of Breeders, which has been translated and available for you here today. And if you need to contact me, our website is www.cbc-network.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. I have a few questions. I have a few questions to ask you if you want to stay here.
Sure.
We heard this. Nous avons suivi, pardon. Vous avez les petits traducteurs autour du cou. Nous avons suivi avec beaucoup d'intérêt votre speech, cette démonstration, ce film, bien sûr, et son extrait. On voudrait savoir en France si nous devrions utiliser et user d'arguments éthiques contre la marchandisation du corps humain, du corps de la femme, ou des arguments médicaux que vous avancez au sujet de ces grossesses gémellaires, des césariennes, des grossesses prématurées, des enfants nés prématurés. Quel est selon vous l'argument qui porte le plus aujourd'hui? Celui de la raison ou celui du sentiment?
Well, I think both. And a medical argument is also an ethical argument. I mean, medicine is rooted in, it should be rooted in the Hippocratic tradition of do no harm. First, do no harm. So I think a medical argument is also an ethical argument. I think it's an ethical argument to make about maternal-child bonding. And yes, that's a medical argument, but it's also an ethical argument. So I think we need to make all of these arguments, and we need to make them in a way that they're publicly acceptable, accessible to our friends and our neighbors as well as our lawmakers.
Quel est l'accueil que le public américain a réservé à votre film?
It depends on who you're asking, the audience. If it's a general public audience, as I mentioned, it's very well received because people don't understand the complexities. They just think it's an altruistic, helping somebody, a good, benevolent thing to do. So when a public audience watches Breeders, they are immediately challenged with things and information that they'd never thought of. And so that gives them pause. And so it's been very well received by the general public. As you can imagine, the industry, the fertility doctors, the surrogacy attorneys, the people who are profiting from surrogacy, of course, have not received the film well at all because they don't like the truth exposed. And they like feeling that the narrative so far has just been, we are just helping people, we're just helping people.
On voit la force aujourd'hui aux États-Unis des mouvements pro-life. Est-ce que vous pensez que si la GPA nous vient des États-Unis, le mouvement des consciences contre elle peut également se lever outre-Atlantique?
Well, of course, I'm always optimistic, and I apologize for the United States being so, we call it the Wild West in this area of medicine, in reproductive medicine. So I am encouraged that, that we can reach people, and we can educate them, and we can quickly inform them and mobilize them. But what has been very refreshing in the United States is that we have been able to develop very strong feminist coalitions. So working with, you will see in the film, two women who are very involved in the National Organization for Women in the US. So very strong, progressive, left, pro-choice feminists who really do not like the exploitation of women in the area of surrogacy. So I think it's important not only to reach the conservative and the pro-life grassroots, but it's also an issue that crosses the divide between politics of left and right and conservative and liberal. And that's been very refreshing.
Enfin, dernière question de Jennifer Lahl, puisqu'on est très heureux de vous avoir ici sur ce plateau. Comment percevez-vous l'opposition à la GPA qui est menée en France par le Grenelle de la famille, par la Manif pour tous, et contre ces torts qui sont causés aux droits de l'enfant? Comment le voyez-vous depuis les États-Unis?
In the United States, we are very encouraged by the demonstration and the work of La Manif. And to see such a robust, across the ages, young and old people just coming out in very large numbers to demonstrate. And that is very refreshing and very encouraging to us back in the United States. So we wish to copy you and someday have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people standing up to stop surrogacy.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Jennifer Lahl. Merci.